And I'm glad you mentioned technology, of course, and AI. AI is all the buzzword, and I mean it's more than a buzzword. And the point you mentioned about how fast things are evolving and how quickly technology changes, but it's also the kind of speed and scale of mass adoption that we've seen with generative AI that has, in a way, surprised people, maybe thrown off a few folks. There is curiosity, excitement, but there's also very palpable fear. So what is your general sense of what is happening, and how do you sort of, maybe perhaps put aside those fears and get to actually creating work fueled by technology?
Yeah. Well, the thing that characterizes it is not only that it's been democratized very quickly, like I think one of the fastest, install bases over a short period of time of any technology. It's not just that, but it's also the fact that it's machine learning means that you're not waiting for for people to create new updates. It's doing updates itself. So that's why it's sort of exponentially changing, and it's sort of dizzying to see what you could create 6 months ago compared to what you can create today. Every time there's a new, a new thing that comes out, either from an image point of view or a text point of view, it just seems mind-boggling, right? And so I think at some point we will see of it less. We'll see of it less as a trick, because right now we're still so enamored by the fact that this thing can happen, and we're going to have to wrestle it to the ground and master it and create new grammars around creativity. I think that's what's coming. I mean, the other thing that's important to note is, unlike other technologies that have sort of come along, even the creators of these technologies are very aware of some of the externalities. So the conversation with government, with regulators, with government, amongst the community, is happening already. So that at least is promising to me. And as a creative person, I see it as an accelerator of creativity, and I see it as something that needs to be mastered. One of the things I think we need to be careful of is to understand that this is not just like every technology that comes along. It doesn't make people that are not very talented enormously talented. It means that you get a sort of baseline that's better than the last baseline, but the quality of thinking that of brilliant people still matters. In fact, some ways it matters more.
True. Yeah. There was something very interesting you said. Mediocrity is now free. Elaborate on that a little bit. And do you think we'll perhaps get to a point where we will celebrate mediocrity more than we do now?
Oh, I don't.
How do you sort of discern between average, good, great? Because I mean, the speed at which there's ChatGPT is doing better than a lot of the writers, and artists out there. So, I mean, why did you say that mediocrity is now free, and what are the implications of that?
Well, there's this sort of base of competence that you get when you are connected to all of the world's information, right? It's what it's not connecting to is the information that doesn't exist yet. So it's different combinations of existing things. And there is I think that it means that you can't get away with doing something that's not very good anymore, because it's so easy now to do something that's as good as everything else, but this has always been true. I remember when I was working in London in the late 80s, and the desktop publishing came along, so Quark Express and Photoshop and all of these things, and there was this sort of moral panic. Because at the time, a very big piece of business for graphic designers was designing annual reports, right? And these beautiful annual reports, you probably don't remember them, but they used to come out every year, obviously. And the front of the annual reports were artful, and the back had all the, and there was this moral panic. So, oh my God, personal assistants are now going to be doing annual reports, and of course they could. Of course they could learn software, and it doesn't mean that they were going to be good. Right, and so I think we're in the same position now. People can do stuff they couldn't do before, but the level at which they can do it will depend as much in their imagination as the tools. So that means that there's going to be just this sort of long tail of things which are just okay, and there's going to be a short, a peak of brilliance that will separate itself because it's so brilliant.
So one more question on sort of the AI piece. Given the fear that a lot of people are feeling, and it's very valid, will AI take your job or whatever it is that you are concerned about when it comes to AI, what would your advice be to young talent getting into the business of creativity, right? I mean, how are they to sort of look at AI and use it to their advantage, or
Yeah.
any technology for that matter? What are the skills you are looking for in talent these days?
Well, there was a time when the pace of new technology was such that you could learn a new technology in college, and then you could have a career based on learning that new technology. And it's why, by the way, when people talk about technology, they never talk about the thing that they learned when they were young. Somehow that is like primal or something. Great advertising creatives don't talk about broadcast as technology or print, but they're both very sophisticated technologies that changed the world when they came along. The difference now is that by the time you learn and master a technology, another one comes along. And so my advice to anyone who's creative is your proximity to that technology has got to be constant, and you've just got to work. So I think one of the problems that happened in the advertising industry was in the late 80s in America, they separated media from creative. And so a creative person went from being very dexterous with media and understanding media to somehow being separated from it and coming up with these things called big ideas. And the problem with the big idea is it looks a lot like the last medium that you were mastered, which is broadcast. So I'm constantly seeing work from the advertising industry, which is framed as a 30-second narrative in a world where almost everything is in an interface. So it's not very dimensional, right? So, and that is a result of just not being, having your hands on the tools. So my advice to young creatives is, especially with generative AI, is use it, experiment. The first time a technology comes out, we tend to use a grammar from the technologies that came before. The only way that you can invent a new grammar based on the potential and the constraints of a new technology is to use it over and over again. You're not going to figure out how to use new technology in a PowerPoint slide. Get your hands on it. And the great thing about this generative AI stuff is there's no barrier. There used to be, you used to have to learn Photoshop. Learning Photoshop was not easy. Learn all
Very
the tool set.
challenging.
Now I just need to type in a prompt. So the skill becomes less around the creation and more around the refinement and the editing and the combining after the creation, because the creation is instant. The idea comes from your head out into the world instantly.